Welcome to the Business and Marketing Podcast That Makes Sense, the podcast dedicated to helping owners and founders gain clarity, untangle complexity, and eliminate the guesswork in running their business.
In each episode, we'll dive into business messaging and methods, clearing the unclears and turning confusion into specific, actionable solutions. We'll tackle and make sense of the challenges we all face, offering insights and strategies from right alongside you.
Our goal is to empower you to be the sense maker, giving you the tools to accelerate your business with clarity and confidence.
So what is an unclear? I kind of am reminded of the time in my life when I was learning to weld, which was a whole new experience for me. And having learned how to weld, I was helping my father-in-law weld the fence on his veranda on his house in Ladysmith in South Africa. And I said to him, "Dad, I can help you with that." And he said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "Okay, well, I'll stand outside and weld outside, and I'll pass the welding rod through the fence, and you take it and you weld the inside." I said, "Okay, that's fine. We'll do this." What you got to understand is that when you've got a welding mask on, that thick black glass makes what's happening on the other side of the mask unclear, which is why when I passed the welding rod through the fence, I stuck the hot end into the middle of his hand and got a reaction that was almost hot enough on its own to melt the fence, never mind weld it. Unclear. Welding mask makes it unclear unless you've got a bright light on the other side in the form of an arc. It's unclear. What do you think, Brad?
I think that's interesting. So today, as you've alluded to there, we're talking about this idea of unclears, and it's a label we've come up with for something that we've both experienced personally. Everybody's experienced it, and we've named this thing, this feeling, this sensation, this challenge. And what we're going to be looking at today is how it impacts your business, where particularly within your business it's going to cause you some problems, and what you can start to do, how you can start thinking like a sense maker to start uncovering those unclears and then unraveling those unclears to make meaning from the mess.
So yeah, what is an unclear? An unclear then by definition in terms of our world is a silent obstacle that hides inside my mind, keeping me from what I want, my reasons for starting in the first place.
Yeah, so when I think about that, and from my perspective, what I think we were talking about when we were thinking that through is why are we all doing what we're doing in the first place, right? It's not like entrepreneurship is the easy option. We
No.
didn't pick this route because it's easier than a 9 to 5. In actual fact, I often joke with people when I'm speaking to them. Anyone that knows me will know I quite often crack some really good dad jokes, and I repeat them because I don't know that many. But one of my favorites is I left my 9 to 5 so that I could work 24/7, right? Entrepreneurship is not the easy route. And so there's got to be a very good reason on the other end of us embarking on this entrepreneur journey to make it at least even seem worthwhile.
Yes.
Exactly. To make
Yeah.
it seem worthwhile. And so what is it on the other side of that? What is our destination? What is our ultimate desire? Is it a lifestyle? Is it a certain car? Is it being able to do things with your family? Is it being able to travel the world? What is the reason that you started your business in the first place? And it's unclears that are holding us back and blocking us from getting to that place, that thing.
In fact, the truth is that most of the people that I speak to, when I ask them that question, are unclear. They're unclear on the goals of their business. They're unclear on the values of their business. They're unclear on the structure of the business. They're unclear on the what's driving the business. They're unclear on the results of the business. They're unclear on so many things that it makes it almost impossible to see where you're going.
Yeah.
Like that welding mask. You need a really seriously bright light on the other side of it to see it. And not all of us have the luxury of having that kind of a bright light to shine on our way, to show us.
And I think for me, an example of this really just sort of springs to mind, and it comes up quite often in conversation. So for anybody that can see the video version of this podcast, behind me on my wall, I've got 2 running numbers. And very often people will say to me, "What are those?" And I'll say they're running numbers. Every so often I get somebody who asks a good question, right? And we're going to come to good questions in a moment in this episode and how they're useful. but somebody will ask a good question and they'll say, what do those mean? Why are they there? They're obviously important because they're hanging on the wall. At which point I'm able to tell them about a story of mine where I had a serious experience with unclears. Shall I unpack it? Do you think it's
Yeah.
worthwhile? Okay, so
Yeah.
in 2019, it was 2019, end of 2019, you received the diagnosis that you had Parkinson's, right?
Yeah.
And so you being you decided and instructed me more than requested my attendance that we were going to raise money for Parkinson's UK and run a marathon. And you had a lot of experience with marathons, ultra marathons, as everybody would have heard in that introductory episode. And the whole running mindset and mentality is a central theme within SenseMaker. And so I was always up for it. I'd always run casually, sort of 5K, 10K, and we embarked on this training to do this marathon. And as far as I was aware, I trained as best as I could, right? I mean, we lived in the southeast, in the flattest part of the UK. I mean, the biggest hill really that you could find to train on was a curb. So I was running at sea level with 100% oxygen on flat terrain, doing the best that I could. And I'd worked my training up, and race day came and we got to the marathon. It was the Hever Castle Marathon. If anybody's listening has done that marathon, you'll know you'll know where I'm going with this. And we learned that day that it was actually one of the more challenging marathons in the country because it's mostly a trail run, which we didn't expect and I hadn't trained for. And it is laps rather than a start to finish. And now it's quite demoralizing when you have to run past the finish line 3 times before you can use it. And I started to look at everybody else around me, and I made the assumption that because they looked fine on the outside, there must have been something wrong with me because of the pain I was feeling. And so I had these stories in my head. Our running pack got separated out, and I started to believe these stories. And my wife was standing on the side as I ran past, and I started to walk. And she said to me, "What's the matter?" And I said, "I can't do this. I don't feel great." And it was afterwards only that I learned that she said, you looked absolutely fine on the outside. I didn't realize that I looked like everybody else looked. And so I came round at about 32 kilometers to the finish line. I had one lap left, and I chucked in the towel and I walked through the finish line. It was really, really tough. I said no to the finishers medal. They sent me to the timing tent, and I got to the tent, and the chap at the desk said to me, "Well, what seems to be the problem?" And I gave him all of the story and the reasons that I had told myself and believed myself. And he looked at me and he said, "So basically you had enough." And it was as though somebody turned the lights on and chucked ice water over my head. And the realization of what I had done and what I had chucked away hit me. And that was because of Unclears. You were in a position where you had done these sorts of runs before, and you knew what it was going to feel like. You knew what it was going to take, and you had that sort of that map laid out inside. I didn't have that, and I came up against those unclears, and I didn't know how to work my way past them, and it completely destroyed my run. And I always say to everybody, you've never really felt bad about yourself until until your dad, who's older than you with Parkinson's, finishes the marathon. So that was kind of really the finishing part of that whole experience. But it shows you the power of unclears. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And I think we've got to get the message out that if you've got unclears in your life or business, you've got two things. You've got stress, because ambiguity causes stress. Not knowing the truth, or not knowing what's going on, or not knowing what's going to happen is stressful. Number one. And number two, you've got a blockage. You've got a stop in your way, and you can't go past it until you've clarified it. And I was just thinking before we started the conversation earlier about unclears and where they apply. And I can remember my dad saying to me when I was a little boy, and I used to go on his country trips with him. He was a traveling salesman. He used to tell me, you can only drive as fast as you can see.
Mm.
It doesn't matter what the speed limit says. It's not a target. It's a limit. Drive as fast as you can see. Because you see, he knew that if the road ahead was unclear, to drive at anything faster than what I could see would be dangerous. I remember the time that we came to this country on holiday, and we were in, I think it was in the Peak District. We were on the highest pass. It went past the highest pub in Europe or in the UK or something. And we were on this pass, and it was thick, 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 thick fog. I couldn't see more than a white line or two white lines ahead of the car. And I knew I was on a pass, but it was unclear. I've never driven so slowly up a mountain in my life. It was unclear. And you just think about all the different things that have happened in your life or that you're dealing with now, where either the way you've got to go about doing it is unclear, the outcome is unclear, the requirement is unclear. You'll find that you're performing at subpar levels, and you can't accelerate a business till you've clarified your unclears. You can't help your kids learn how to read and write until you've clarified your unclears about what they're being taught. You can't drive a car until you've clarified the unclears. Everything in life has got to do with clarity of the unclear and finding my way to it. And so you're right about the marathon. And I had that experience myself when I started training for the comrades. I remember the two old guys that I was training with decided to see if I could run, and they took me on a 20K run or something stupid like that. And I nearly died, but I learned what it was to hang in and to get through the pain of breaking an unclear.
Yeah. And I think so. So if I'm summarizing here, what we're learning and what we're unpacking so far about these things is that these are the things that are keeping us from the finish line,
Yes.
right? These are the things that are causing us to quit.
Yes.
I will never forget the feeling I had just before I quit on that day, on that run. And there are times when I'm dealing with, personally and professionally, I'm dealing with challenges where I want to quit. But I know that when I feel that feeling that I felt on that run that day, that there is an unclear, number one. And number two, that I'm closer than I think I am to the finish line. And so they keep you from the finish line. They cause you to quit. They make you want to throw the towel in. They tell you these lies. I think we've said it before, where they throw up red herrings and they cause you to believe something to be true, which isn't necessarily true. And they slow us down. And they affect our performance.
They do.
And so if we really want to get to where we want to be, if we want the reason for starting in the first place, we have to learn how to find a thread on our unclear, the little ball of wool or whatever, however we want to imagine it, and we need to know how to start pulling at that in a sustainable, repeatable, logical way that lets us do it every single time we come up against it.
That's it, Brad. Absolutely true. So here's the situation. Progress is impossible if I don't clarify the unclears that are blocking my path. What kind of a complication does that bring to me? Well, the complication that causes is that leaving unclears unresolved will stall my life and my business. Will stall my progress. So the question then becomes, well, how do I identify, clarify, learn from, and overcome the unclears that are holding me back? I don't know if you noticed that there I used the SenseMaker method very smoothly, but identify, clarify, learn, apply. That's the 4 quadrants, and I really encourage you to get that mantra into your head. Identify, clarify, learn, apply. Identify what the blockage is, clarify why it's a blockage, learn how to solve the blockage, apply what I've learned. And I encourage you with that. It's a key part of breaking through on unclears. Identify, clarify, learn, apply.
And that's the SenseMaker mindset. And so I've got a question for you, and I would love to hear your expression of it, but also to some extent, if you can, maybe an expression like a combined, joined expression that you've heard from founders and owners that you've worked with over the years. Describe to us as best you can what it feels like when we've got an unclear. Are there sensations that we can look out for? What are the signals that we should be looking out for when we're sensing an unclear?
I think the kind of things that happen when you're dealing with unclears is you can have a physical reaction to it. You can start to feel super stressed. You can start to feel, I look at people's fingernails, And people who've got a lot of unclears in their lives, in business, in my experience, have got fingernails that are really chewed through stress, just like stressed. And that's one of the symptoms of an unclear. I think a lack of control, where they're out of control and they've got everybody telling them what to do, and they don't feel anchored in anything
Mm.
because their bedrock is missing. They don't have a bedrock. They don't have a point of reference that they can go to and say, "This is my point of reference. No, I'm not going to do that," or "Yes, I am." I think unclears breed ambiguity, and so with an increasing workload, what people do is that they employ more people to help them deal with an increasing workload, and they don't really solve the problem, because all they're doing is increasing the load, the ambiguity load on themselves and on the organization. And so people start making up their own solutions to problems because the owner's too busy, he's not there, he's selling, making, doing whatever. And people start making up their own solutions to problems, which leads in itself to a problem, because suddenly the owner, who knows that this is happening, has got people in his business who knows stuff about his business or her business that they don't know. And so if there's a problem, they can't do anything about it because they can't afford to let that person go, because if they do, all their knowledge is going to go with them. It's a horrible, horrible, horrible place to be. And it breaks my heart to see people struggling with this, because I know that the solution is there, and it's relatively easy if you're willing to make the effort to break through. Have I answered your question?
You have, and I think if I pull that apart a little bit more, anybody that's seen our logo will know that we've got a sort of illustrated articulation of what an unclear is and how it feels inside your head. And we've had clients look at it and say, "Oh, I get it. That's what it feels like inside my head when I'm stuck." And I think that it's about learning to realize, hold on a minute, I'm trying to figure something out. I got that tight feeling in my head where it's like trying to put my foot on the accelerator whilst my foot's on the brake.
Right, at the same time.
And it just it like you say, causes stress, it causes mental fatigue, and it's completely unhelpful.
And the thing is, I start to drop the ball, and things start going wrong.
You start to
And
doubt yourself.
it increases my stress. And because I'm more stressed, I make more mistakes, which increases my stress and speaks to my bottom line. So I start telling myself that I can't run this business. I should never have started it. The people around me say things like, "Don't you think it would be better for you just to get a full-time job with a salary, Dario, and take some of the pressure off yourself?" The problem is that I can't do that, because I know that the solution is there. I just can't see it, and I can't get to it. And so I might read books on how to do these things, and all it does is it adds to the pressure, because I don't have the infrastructure in place, and I don't
They
know.
make it sound so easy, don't they?
They do, but they don't. I read a book about a guy who was writing his life story, a very well-known person in this country, and he was explaining about his business and the way he started, and it was such an amazing story. And as he was explaining, he said this: "I had a gut feeling that this would work." And I thought, well, that for me just discounts the book, because how do you measure a gut feeling?
How is that repeatable?
It's an unclear. A gut feeling is an unclear.
And I think the thing that I would add to this is the frustration that we have when we have these unclears. It's kind of this weird paradox, because like you say, if you're willing to, it actually can become quite easy to start unraveling these things. And what we often don't realize, and what we try and talk about and remind myself of constantly when I'm stuck, is that an unclear is just disorganized information. It's muddled contexts, it's muddled ideas, it's muddled concepts, it's muddled not knowingness. And actually, it's all the material that we need. If we can straighten it out and make it coherent, it's all the material we need to do the thing that we want to do, to get to the place that we want to get to. And if we can just keep solving those unclears, clearing those unclears, we're going to get to a place where it's going to accelerate. There's going to get momentum behind what we're doing.
Yeah. And the thing is, I think, is Ryan Holiday says in his excellent book, The Obstacle is the Way, which is one of my set workbooks for everybody that I work with. The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. And I don't know who by Profile Books, it looks like. He talks about these challenges that come your way and the fact that we can get tired of fighting the fight. And that's the thing that we can't do. We can't stop fighting the fight. We've got to keep going, but we've got to arm ourselves and help ourselves by giving us a mindset that's going to keep us going through the melee of breaking through these unclears, and then the insight into an idea that is called absorptive capacity, and then finally the ability to ask good questions. I think for me, those are the three key things that have helped me to learn how to break through unclears, because they're always going to be there. And in his book, Ryan Holiday writes in the chapter called Prepare to Start Again, that just when you think you've successfully navigated one obstacle, another emerges. This is a never-ending story, and it's a spiral. It's not a straight line. And I think that's something that comes out of it as well, is that breaking unclears is a progression. It's not an instant straight line. It's not an instant fix. It's a growth experience. It's a life-changing experience, because that's what it's about. Yeah. It's about making me a better person, about making me a more enlightened person. And there's enormous value in taking time to unpack my unclears and to find my way through them. So those three ideas are key, in my view, to breaking through or getting to grips with an unclear. Develop a growth mindset, increase my capacity to absorb new knowledge, and develop my ability to ask better questions. Three key things.
So let's think about this for a bit then. We if we're going to start our listeners on this journey to the SenseMaker mindset, where they're going to be able to think like this and unpick these unclears themselves. Let's take an example, whether it's from a business operations space where there's unclears, or a marketing space where there's unclears. What does that look like? How can we now turn this outward and say, okay, guys, this is how we would approach clearing an unclear?
Okay. There are a couple of thoughts that come to mind. I'm working with a company as we speak whose revenue is down. And so you can become so focused on my revenue is down that you forget about thinking about the drivers that cause my revenue to go up or down. And so people will say things to me like, I'm really trying to get my revenue up, or I'm really trying to increase sales, or whatever it might be that the term that they use to name it. But what I've learned is that very often that's just a symptom. So I've got a direct correlation between the fit of my shirts and the quantity of chocolate that I consume. The more chocolate I eat, the tighter my shirts get. The less chocolate I eat, the looser my shirts get. It's a scientific wonder. It's a marvel. But the quantity of chocolate is the driver of this fit of my shirt, which actually is not the problem at all. It's the size of my girth. My waistline is the problem. I've tried to explain to Sue that round is a shape. And so technically I'm in shape, but she tells me that doesn't count. But if you think about it, jokes aside, I get hooked on the symptom and forget about the drivers. So the number of calories I take in a day is important. The number of calories I burn in a day is important. The amount of water I drink in a day is important. The amount of sleep I have at night is important. What I put on my plate through the course of the day is important. There are all these drivers that cause my weight to go up or down. And I can get so hung up on eating on a small plate and doing all these things. But if I'm loading myself up with calories every day and not burning them, if I'm going through all these unhealthy patterns and practices, I'm never going to solve the problem. And I'll be sad and depressed because I've got an unclear. So in the situation that we're in now, we're looking at the environment around the restaurant. What's happening in the environment? What's happening in the locality? What else can we measure? What else can we look at? What else can we see? What else can we think about? In a motor garage that I was supporting at one stage, same thing. Revenue's down. Well, let's think about your customer service. Well, what's that going to do to my revenue? Well, I don't quite know, but let's just go and look at your customer service. I'm going to walk in the door and let's go through your process for welcoming a customer into your garage. And we went through the process and realized that he was doing nothing at all to sell anything. He was just collecting keys and letting people out the front. And so we needed to do something about the drivers of his poor revenue. So, yeah, I think drivers are important.
Yeah. So if I was summarizing that, I'd say point one, zoom out, right? Am I trying to solve the effect instead of the cause? That should be the first question that I'm asking myself.
Good
Am I
one.
trying to solve the effect instead of the cause? What's the next thing? Once we've zoomed in and we're looking at what we think might be the drivers of this effect that we're observing, the effect is the observable thing, the thing that usually alerts us to the fact that there's a problem because we've got an outcome that we didn't want or didn't expect, right?
Yep.
So let's zoom out, refocus, focus on what might be causing that. And something that we often like to do in the Master Your Mind groups is 20 questions exercise. And
Yes.
so I highly recommend anybody listening who's struggling, just write down on a lined piece of paper or a plain piece of paper, 1 to 20, and start off with, as you love to say, might it be, right? Might
Yes.
it be this and this and this? Might it be this and this and this? And just force yourself to write out at least 20 might it be's. And you'll see that when you get to that place of 20, you'll probably actually have more. And that really is a good way, once we've zoomed out, to start unpacking potential issues or drivers, as you said, that are causing us to get a result that we don't want.
Yes. And then I begin to test my might it be's. Now, the interesting thing about this exercise is that it takes a growth mindset for it to work. And what do I mean by that? Well, a growth mindset is a mindset that allows me to get it wrong. And a growth mindset is something that causes me to see possibility where there is difficulty, where it helps me to be willing to learn and to see failure as an opportunity for growth. Nelson Mandela said, I don't win or lose, I win or learn.
Mm.
And a growth mindset helps me to understand that there are no limits, that change is possible if I'm willing to try. So if I'm getting into the problem solving mode, if I'm getting into the unclear smashing mode,
Yeah.
I've got to go there with a mindset that says, this is just a challenge. As Ryan Holiday said, it's just an obstacle. It's just a challenge. It's not my whole life. It's just a challenge. And like every other challenge, there's got to be an answer. And I'm going to start looking for that answer. And I'm going to formulate as many questions as I can about what might be the cause. I'm going to get people to help me. We've done it in the Master Your Mind group, where we just go and ask question after question. I've written out pages of questions looking for a good one. And we'll come to that a bit more in a minute. But the thing is, how do I know I've got the mindset that what mindset I have got is to think about my reaction when there's a failure. If I make a mistake, how do I react? If something goes wrong, how do I react? Do I suddenly see it as a cause to give up? Do I suddenly see it as a reason for my failure? I'm the failure. I'm useless. I'm stupid. How many times do we do that? But you hurt yourself when you're fixing something. You say, oh, you're so stupid. I'm so slow with this kind of thing. We berate ourselves like this. And that's unhelpful. And that's very often a symptom of a closed mindset. And so we want to do away with that. We want to make sure we've got an open mindset, that we're going into the resolution of the unclear with a mind that says there is a solution here. I've just got to find it. I remember when we came to this country originally, we had to get winter coats for our children because we left the South African summer. And there were no coats. It was all getting ready for the summer season. And I can remember saying to the children, there's a coat with your name on it. We're going to find it. And we just kept going relentlessly until we found those coats. And that's what this is about. It's about saying there's a solution to this problem with my name on it. I'm going to keep going until I find the solution, until I make the breakthrough. Growth mindset. So the way I go about changing my mindset is to focus on catching myself doing things right, catching other people doing things right, develop a thankful attitude towards failure and things going wrong, and see it as an opportunity to learn and to try again. So that growth mindset thing is really, for me, is really, really important.
And so my hope, I know, and I know yours too, is that people listening to this, we're 30 minutes deep into That Makes Sense, our new podcast, and we're already on the road together to becoming sense makers, to setting ourselves up with a growth mindset, to accept the sense maker way of thinking, right?
Yeah.
And so the first thing that we want to do as somebody who's new to sense making, when we're unpacking an unclear, getting rid of unclears, we want to say, number one, zoom out. Am I trying to solve the effect instead of the cause, right? That's identify. Number two, 20 questions exercise. That's clarify. Number three, test our might it be's. That's learn. And number four, growth mindset, an act to plan. Let's take a step forward to make sure that what we've discovered on our identify, clarify, learn, we're actually applying and we're taking forward so that we're not doing the same thing over and over again. And I would really encourage anybody who feels like this has resonated with them to reach out. On your favorite podcast platform, you'll be able to send us a text message. You can send us a direct message and join us on our Master Your Mind groups and sessions. And let's continue this journey together of becoming sense makers and solving these problems, clearing these unclears so that we can move forward and grow our businesses and our lives.
And there endeth the lesson. If you found this episode helpful, why not complete the free assessment on our website at sensemaker.co.uk to uncover your unclears?
SenseMaker, your bridge between where you're stuck and your reason for starting.